Welcome to the RPGBOT.Podcast. I'm Reynold James, and with me is Tyler Campstra.
Hi, everybody.
And Ash Eli.
What are you talking about, partner? This podcast, rather, ain't big enough for two of us. Get your 6-shooter ready.
Cowboy, you just yeed your last hunt.
Yes, you did, partner. Yes, you did.
All right, I'm just going to try this crossbow and see how that goes.
Surprisingly well.
Oh no!
All
Is
right,
this where Tyler hates on guns? Oh boy!
Only wizards should have guns. That's how he feels.
Yeah, well, they tread on his precious wizards, like. But I'm the fireball guy. You're not allowed to do anything else. You're not allowed to do fireballs too.
You're not also allowed to have fun. What is this?
Certainly not more fun than I am. All right, Tyler, what is happening?
Tonight we're going to talk about firearms, guns, if you will, in D&D and Pathfinder.
It's my Second Amendment right.
Your Second Amendment right to polymorph your arms into bears. So firearms have been in D&D for a while. They've been in Pathfinder for a while. They've always been kind of a weird, controversial subject in dungeon fantasy games because people have a very skewed perception of the real world history of firearms versus plate armor, honestly. I'm going to start us off with a question. Between the three of us, gentlemen, spicy opinions, do we believe that there should be firearms in a dungeon fantasy setting?
Yes, I do. 100%.
Okay.
I think that if you don't put guns into your fantasy setting, you're kidding yourself. And you need to absolutely explain why there are no firearms or gunpowder in your setting, because that is wild and ridiculous. That's my spicy take.
Okay.
Is there a why for that? Like, are you basing that on history?
We'll get to that once we get to the history section, where Ash is going to go on a bit.
You're going to hold it for now.
Yeah, Ash is going to go on a bit of a rant.
I'm actually looking forward to this. I hope it's spicy, or I hope it's explosive. I don't know. Okay.
All right. How about you, Randall?
I am going to go no, and I'm going to attempt to explain myself.
Okay.
I don't have a problem with it. I think we have reasonable mechanics in both 5e and PF2 for handling ranged equipment. If firearms are better than my crossbows or my bows or my javelins, whatever, then why would anybody ever use anything but a firearm? And vice versa, if they're not more impactful, then why bother again? If we had a mechanic where we had something like a lobbed weapon or a stringed weapon, and then that was interesting and it had its benefits and it had like strong features and PF2. And then we also had firearms, and then firearms had their own mechanics that made them interesting and fun in their own way. I think I could come along. If all a firearm is a super crossbow.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's not necessarily true, because in 5e, guns are more powerful than crossbows because they have a higher damage die. And in PF2, yeah, like you said, they have their own mechanics that go around with them. So guns deserved at least to be part of the conversation, if nothing else. Especially because to ignore guns is to ignore one of the biggest technological leaps forward and the game changer for combat that gunpowder was in history. Because it absolutely was.
Yeah. In my opinion, I think in a setting like D&D where magic is abundantly available, repeatable, functionally scientific, I don't see any reason why people would bother developing gunpowder. If there are going to be firearms in the setting, in my opinion, they should be purely magical in nature. Like, people probably wouldn't explore chemistry enough to actually develop something as mundane as gunpowder. Why would there be guns when you can have wands? And like, our friends at GUI Cube, and this is a weird prop that I happen to have, they have a custom class called the Flintlock Fusilier, and it's essentially a system of guns that run entirely on magic. It's neat.
My counter argument to that, because it's an argument I hear a lot, which is, why would you have guns and gunpowder when you can just lob a fireball at someone? I think it depends on the setting. If we're going with like magic is easy to pick up, pretty much everybody can do it if they put their minds to it, then yes, I agree with you. Even most fantasy settings don't work that way. magic is hard to get and is out of the realm of most people? The simple answer is, why would you invent technology? Why would you invent gunpowder? Because it's easily accessible to the common person. Now, the fighter can also do damage from afar without having to spend years getting a college degree so that they can cast wizard spells. So technology, the simple answer is technology democratizes power in a fantasy setting. Specifically, when we get to talking about like how you can use this in setting, I'll go a little bit over how I've rationalized technology and magic coexisting in the same world. Like sufficiently advanced technology and sufficiently advanced magic can exist in the same world. So you can come up with reasons for anything existing. I think you limit yourself by saying, well, guns are just default no. I think at the very least, you should at least question, okay, if I don't want to have firearms in here, I need to find a way to justify it, because otherwise it's just like this gaping hole that warrants an explanation. If you don't want guns in your setting, that's fine. But if your player asks and you don't have a good reason as to why gunpowder doesn't exist, I just feel like that's a problem because it's a major question.
Okay. So Ash, you promised us a little bit the real world history and context. Tell us real world history facts.
Oh boy. So famously, gunpowder was invented back in the 10th century. That's 900s for people who don't know how the century stuff works. It's very weird. Yeah. I know not everybody's classically trained in history. So it was invented in the 900s by the Chinese, and then it pretty rapidly spread to Europe. A common misconception that I see a lot, and the reason why most people think that gunpowders and fantasy settings are diametrically opposed, is because people, when they're trying to do fantasy settings, are like, we're going for high Middle Ages here, and guns were just not part of the high Middle Ages. That is 100% false. The very first use of guns in Europe, not just in the world, in Europe, was in 1326, which is right smack dab in the middle of the high Middle Ages. In fact, one of the famous battles in the 100 Years' War, the Battle of Crécy, the 100 Years' War is considered to be vintage high Middle Ages, was the English were fighting with their longbowmen side by side with organ guns. So gunpowder has been in Europe for longer than most people realize. The other classical thing is like, well, we want knights in here, and didn't gunpowders end the Age of Knights? No. There were a lot of reasons why knights went away, and it was not to do with guns. Like, it was maybe part of the reason, but it was a minor factor as to why knights went away. In fact, the entire image of the knights in shining armor on, armored horses, that image never existed in a world without guns, because the first knights came around in the 15th century, I should say, in the 1400s, which was well after Europeans were already using gunpowder. In fact, a little fun fact, the term bulletproof came from when blacksmiths were making and designing armor for knights, because they would sell it to, specific noble families for their knights, to prove that their material was good and suited for battle. They would take an arquebus and shoot it. And then the nobleman could check it for dents and stuff like that. That's where we get the term bulletproof. I don't want to go too much in a rabbit hole, but the reason why the knights fell out was a combination of their relevance just kind of shifting away. Like the slow death of feudalism made knights less of a relevant thing, as well as the real death of knights was, strangely enough, the pike. The pike was where it was the real killer of the knights, because the Swiss.
What if I stick a can opener on the end of a long stick and you're right hand?
Yeah, the thing was that knights really started to show their age, I would say, around the late 1500s to 1600s, because it wasn't necessarily the knights themselves; it was mostly the tactics that the knights were used for. Classically, knights would be, the cavalry charge was the game changer for thousands of years, was the cavalry charge. The pike kind of countered that really well. And the pikemen were cheap to field. They didn't require a lot of training. They didn't require a lot of strength. And they worked really well with guns, because the guns could be lined up between the pikes and stuff like that. So it was a fundamental, perfect storm of instances that ultimately caused knights to die out. It wasn't just, the guns can pierce armor. for a long time, guns couldn't pierce armor. They were slightly better at it than like a bow, but about the same as like a crossbow. So when people are like, well, what's the point of having a gun if I have a crossbow? I mean, guns in the Middle Ages were essentially fancy crossbows. The difference is that they were cheaper to make in a lot of respects. And easier to handle, easier to reload. Crossbows, unless you're talking about a crank crossbow, crossbows take a lot of time as well, even with cranks, and it requires a lot of personal strength to reload, even more so than sometimes with certain bows. But with guns, you just needed to have the gunpowder and the flint, and that was basically it. And guns only got better and more accurate and more deadly with time.
On the flip side, you have to keep your powder dry, and we all know how hard it is to do that.
That was such a dad joke if I've ever heard that.
Well, no, I mean, it's a real thing.
I know. I've heard the proverb. My dad said that to me all the time, and I was like, what the heck does that mean? So hearing you say it right now, I'm just like, that reminds me so much of my dad that it's scary. Anyway, the most common form of handheld muskets or handheld guns were either the hand cannon or the arquebus. The arquebus was later. The hand cannon was like the earlier one, or it's called a hand cannon because it was basically a cannon that you had on a stick, and you would just light it, and it would shoot stuff out. It wasn't very practical, but it got the job done. But yeah, the arquebus is probably the reason why a lot of people associate guns with, like, the Renaissance and post knights, even though the knights still existed in the Renaissance, is because of the arquebus. The arquebus was invented around the Renaissance era and was used a lot. And yes, Quasit brought out very famously, the arquebus was used for great success and effect in the Sengoku period in Japan. But that was how Nobunaga ended up winning the war, was because of the imported guns from the Dutch at the time. So yeah, guns have always been prevalent in Europe to some respect in the entirety of what you would think of as the High Middle Ages. It is odd, though, that this idea of fantasy settings, medieval fantasy settings, being fundamentally incompatible with gunpowder. And I think the reasons for that are very complicated, but it basically boils down to, I think, we want to have like personal fights and swords where we can equip at each other. And also it's just like, we have guns now. They're fine, but they're not super cool. They're like rule of cool. We want our martial characters to shine, and we can't really rationalize why would melee weapons still exist in a society where gunpowder exists. And the simple answer is they still did. It was. I know it's hard to rationalize. I think the problem is people have this idea in their heads that guns were an instant game changer and made everything irrelevant but guns. When, yes, they were indeed a game changer, but they didn't change things overnight. And it certainly was a slow process. Like, people were still doing melee combat tactics well into the 1800s. So guns, and that was when guns were far more accurate and deadly than they were in the Middle Ages. We still had cavalry charges. Actually, into the late 1800s, the time when cavalry charges and melee weapons finally died out was World War I.
Yes.
Because World War I was when people realized, this doesn't work anymore. The idea that melee fighting is fundamentally incompatible with guns is just false. It's just not true.
I think a lot of where this issue comes from is just honestly fantasy fiction. Like Lord of the Rings, famously, no guns.
Yep.
But also fireworks, though.
Fireworks, yes.
Fireworks are always the exception for some reason. I don't know why. Okay, if you don't, rant time again. If you don't want guns or gunpowder in your game, that's fine. I understand that. Don't have fireworks then, because I'm gonna have questions. Unless it's like prestidigitation, or magic, that's fine. But if it's actual gunpowder, then I'm gonna be like, why haven't they made guns then? That makes no sense. Why don't they have cannons?
Yeah. So I know Lord of the Rings, like the technology level was like pre-plate armor. Like the best armor they had was chainmail. So, a couple of centuries before plate armor really became a thing, which you could justify like, okay, yeah, technologically gunpowder hadn't become a thing in the real world on that timeline. other excuses.
I mean,
yeah, there's tons of other fantasy fiction where it is a fantasy story. There are swords, there's armor, no guns.
Yeah. I mean, there's a simple way you can explain how guns don't exist in a setting. Saltpeter doesn't exist. There you go.
Yeah.
Just take away saltpeter. It really is not used for anything other than gunpowder. So just take it away. You don't lose anything.
What is saltpeter?
It's a mineral that you can use that's highly combustible. I don't know a lot.
But like we mine it, though. Is that what I'm hearing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, imagine being the first person with a pickaxe hitting that. Just anyway.
Actually, famously, there's a myth. So the reason the way gunpowder was discovered was because potassium nitrate. Thank you, Dan. The way gunpowder was invented was a Chinese emperor. I don't know if this is true. This is just a rumor and myth. A Chinese emperor was trying to find an elixir of immortality, and people used this and it ended up exploding instead of, making an elixir of eternal life. They're like, well, we failed at that, but hey, we got something cool out of it, so that's fun.
What a way to go out. All right.
Dan, you said it has one more use. What is the other use? Oh, is it used for medicine, like heart attacks? I know
nitroglycerin is.
Nitroglycerin, yeah. Anyway,
I have no idea how much chemical overlap there is there. I'm not sciencey, man.
But I get again, in a world where fantasy magic exists, you could probably just replace that. Oh God.
All right, can't say that on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. Thanks for that little trivia tidbit. I'm not going to say that. But yeah, in a world where magic exists, you can make up for anything that saltpeter would be used for in science with magic. So just take away saltpeter, and you don't have any more questions.
I'm in the Wikipedia for this. Some of these things are not like another. So we could use it for fertilizer. That makes a lot of sense. Potassium, good for plants. Nitrates, good for plants. Makes sense. Also, tree stump removal, rocket propellants, and fireworks. So like, I want to grow corn or I want explosions. Potash. Let's party.
Also, tree stump removal.
Wait, you don't blow up your tree stumps? Anyway, gunpowder.
I mean, I haven't yet.
Let's maybe talk about some of the settings and see how they explain how gunpowder does or does not exist in their settings.
Okay. So you remember that time we had Keith Baker on the podcast? How cool that was.
Yeah.
Still excited about that.
That was awesome. That was very cool.
All right.
I'm sorry that if he's listening, I'm sorry that your business folded. I hope that you get back on.
Yeah. God, that sucks.
Yeah, it really
their
does.
board gaming business is still doing great, apparently.
Good. Okay.
Their DM's Guild publishing operation died after the last product.
Yeah.
I know he was really passionate about the board game publishing. So
yeah,
he's still
good.
Yeah. I blame WotC for the DM's Guild stuff, though, because they did not treat him with the respect he deserved.
Yeah. All right, so Eberron, still probably my favorite official D&D setting.
That's awesome.
So Eberron famously very, very high magic. Like, magic is treated as science because Keith Baker looked at the way magic worked in D&D, where spells were reliable, repeatable, and teachable. And like, you could teach someone, do these steps, you will cast this spell, and it'll just work. And he took that to its logical conclusion and built an entire setting where magic was treated functionally as science. Because academics and science in the Eberron setting pursued magic instead of something like chemistry, they never discovered gunpowder. So instead of gunpowder-based firearms, like, we still have those medieval era weapons, crossbows, bows, swords, all of those things, plate armor and all of that. But their equivalent of guns is just wands. Like, they can just mass produce wands. Like, oh, you don't go buy a pistol, you just buy a wand of fireball.
Yeah, that is a question that I have for anybody who thinks that, well, if we have guns, we can't have, melee weapons. Arguably, magic invalidates melee more than guns do.
Sure does.
I mean, yeah, in 5e it does.
Yeah, what good is plate armor and a sword when the wizard can just create a pit in front of you, push you back, and throw a fireball at you? Gun can't do that. Gun just shoots. That's all it does.
Yeah. Sword certainly can't do that. Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, okay. All right, so that's Eberron. Faerun, the Forgotten Realms. So this one's a little let's be honest, it's stupid. It's stupid.
It is.
It's DM fiat. It's 100% DM fiat. Just I have declared.
Yeah, no, it's 100%. Somebody asked the DM one time, why is there no gunpowder if there's fireworks? And he was like, this. It's so stupid. I hate it so much.
Okay, so the in-setting explanation is Gond, the god of gnomes and also invention. His clergy discovered gunpowder, were very excited about it, and set about using it in all kinds of ways. It got mass-produced, distributed to the masses, and a mass of poorly educated, irresponsible people with sudden access to explosives met exactly the result you would expect, and a lot of people died. Gond thought, this isn't great for my reputation. This could cause people to stop worshipping me. So I'm gonna make the chemical reaction that causes gunpowder to be flammable and explode. I'm gonna make that just not happen. You still can mix those exact same ingredients, and like the Forgotten Realms wiki lists gunpowder as useful for removing rust, among other things, but it does not explode.
I love that he was like, gunpowder is too dangerous and it causes mass death and destruction. Are we just going to ignore the time that someone killed Mistra with magic and caused a spell plague and made basically a magical nuke? But that's fine. That's totally okay. Well, this is the problem that I have with this explanation. It's so stupid.
Look, I mean, they killed Mistril at the time. Her name changes every time she respawns. But they killed her with a 10th level spell, and she came back and said, all right, no 10th level spells for mortals.
Yeah, so, but even still, like, the magic can be so destructive. Like, Vecna isn't conquering stuff with a nuclear bomb, but he might as well be.
I guess here's the distinction, though, right? Gond wasn't worried about losing followers over the other issues. He was worried particularly he was going to get blamed about gunpowder.
No.
Yeah, so we turn this into politics.
No. I understand why Gond did it. Fine. That's valid. Well, I'm saying, why did the creators say that Gond cares about this, but Mistra doesn't? Mistra's just like,
that's fair.
Yeah,
that's
I realize that someone can cast Meteor Swarm when they want to. That seems fine.
Right, but how many people get high enough level to cast even Fireball compared to how many people could just pick up a bag of gunpowder?
That's fair.
And burn down their house?
What do the Bill of Rights look like in Faerun? Maybe there's just a right to magic, and you can't.
I mean,
it's what the gods intended. Okay.
If the Cold War proved anything, you don't need the average person to have access to a nuke. You just need people in power to have access to nukes in order to threaten the world.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying.
All right. So,
have we had Fantasy Mad yet?
Fantasy Mad? No.
Mutually assured destruction. Yeah. That would be cool. A fantasy setting that's in the midst of a Cold War. I guess you could kind of argue that was what happened in Eberron with the last war. Yeah, they basically nuked an entire country off the map. Eberron at least handles the implications of sufficiently advanced magic with some grace and tact and actual implications. Faerun, do better. I'm disappointed in you.
Okay. All right. So people who've played Baldur's Gate 3 are probably thinking, wait a minute, but what about all of those exploding barrels that I used to make every boss not matter? What about them? Because those are definitely gunpowder, right?
It's smoke powder. It's different.
Again, this is stupid.
It is. It's very stupid.
I'm not familiar with the idea of smoke powder, and I'm looking forward to being angry.
All right.
Go on.
The clergy of Gond, sad that gunpowder had to be taken away from them, but also not deterred by their god telling them no, found loophole, and they found a secret ingredient which technically gets around Gond's prohibition on gunpowder and produces smoke powder, which is, instead of chemical in nature, magical in nature. So it's not supposed to function inside anti-magic fields. You could dispel magic, rune powder, or smoke powder. Basically, they found a loophole, and Gond was like, you know what? I'm going to let you have this one.
Yeah,
I'm going to need some
fine.
I have some questions, and I would like to ask them now.
Oh, they're going to have dumb answers. They're going to have dumb answers. So just prep yourself.
So I can put it in a barrel, and then I can hit it with fire, and the barrel will explode enough to...
Correct. You can also put it... the most popular way of doing it is you put it in a little pouch, like a little leather pouch. You throw it, and you blow it up. So you could just do that.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. But as soon as what I do is I open that leather pouch, and I pour it into a cylinder.
No, you can't do that. You can't do that.
No.
Okay.
You absolutely can. Canonically, you can't. There are firearms in Forgotten Realms that work using smoke powder.
Why do I never see them then?
Great question.
And why are they not everywhere?
Isn't that just guns?
Yes, they are just guns. Okay. Again, this is stupid. So GOND has prohibited gunpowder because it was too easy to mass produce and distribute. Smoke powder is more difficult to produce and distribute because you have to have that magical secret ingredient. And the magical secret ingredient is a very, very closely kept secret by the clergy of GOND. Basically, the secret hasn't gotten out widely enough that it's become a problem. As soon as it will, GOND will probably be like, okay, you guys have had your fun. This became a problem. I'm going to have to take this one away too, but we'll wait for the next loophole.
Okay, wait. So the followers are most likely raising vast amounts of money for GOND and for themselves, but also for GOND, enriching themselves by selling smoke powder. Cool. No, that checks out. Actually, this meets all my expectations. I have no further questions. Ash, there's no further questions. This is good.
No, I have so many questions, but I'm going to put it down to one. It is wild to me that an entire culture of gnomes, not a single person tried to sell the secret to someone else. Considering that it's very popular and people will pay top dollar for something like this, the fact that every gnome in existence has sworn to not tell the secret is wild to me. And we're talking about the same people in Baldur's Gate who wanted to blow up a freaking building because it was inconveniencing them. These are the people but selling the secrets to gunpowder is just, no, we don't do that. But we'll kill innocent people. Freaking wild and stupid.
All right. Okay, so it's only the clergy of GOND who have this. So presumably you have to be bought in enough to their religion.
Not in Baldur's Gate.
See, they don't have the secret of how to manufacture it. That's the thing.
They just have the material.
They have it because there is enough of a supply that you can buy and sell it. Probably not enough that everyone's going to go out and buy a gun, but there is a trade for it.
No. The whole subplot in Baldur's Gate is that ass gnome, that guy who's a jerk the entire time.
Wolbrin Bongle.
Yeah, Wolbrin. Screw that guy. But the reason why he has so many followers who want to get back into Baldur's Gate is because he has the secret to making smoke powder. That's his whole deal.
Yeah.
Is that somehow he acquired it and he's not willing to sell that to fund his operation at all? Even though, again, he wants to blow up a building full of innocent people.
It's more valuable because he's the only one with secret. Sometimes secrets are valuable if you sell them. Sometimes secrets are valuable. It's like the trade secret versus patent.
Even still, I find it wild that not a single corrupt gnome tried to sell the secret to someone else. Yeah. It's dumb and stupid, and I hate it. And just do better than this. This is just not the way to go about it.
We're going to find out one day that the whole deal with smoke powder is that it's actually just gunpowder and they lied.
Yeah.
That would be so funny.
That would be great. I would actually respect that twist. That would be hilarious. That the gnomes have done an effective propaganda twist. They're just like, yeah, it was just gunpowder.
Me the whole time.
Someday we're going to get a green one on this podcast and be like, Ash, I heard you talking trash.
Sorry, Ed. I love all of Freyroom, but this, you can do better, bud. I know you can. Because this is just not good. It's like the DM didn't want to have gunpowder in their game, but one of their players really wanted to blow stuff up with specifically gunpowder. So they're like, okay, I'm going to make an exception, but it's really esoteric and rare, so you're the only one who can have it. And I'm just like, right. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Or they needed an excuse to put guns in the setting. I don't know. Okay. All right. We should move on from the Forgotten Realms. Just very quickly. Kyrus Quasit is in the chat calling out Spelljammer. There are guns in Spelljammer. GIF famously use guns. The reason they are really good with guns and explosives is canonically, they cannot use magic in any form. So naturally, how do they upgrade from bows and crossbows? You develop fire. Makes sense.
Except in 5e,
GIF, right?
Go sit in the corner. Except in 5e, the GIF or GIF or whatever can use magic. Because if you're a player race, we're not going to prevent you from...
though.
Yeah, so stupid. I hate it.
Yeah. You lose half the fun of the race.
Yeah.
There's also space clowns in Spelljammer who, if I remember correctly, canonically have access to ray guns. Why? Don't know.
Yeah, I remember we were playing a game which was not Spelljammer, and yet there was a Spelljammer in the game along with...
Icewind Dale.
Well, I was going to not. Anyway, it's fine. Yeah, it was Isodale. What are the gnome illithids called?
I don't remember.
We ran into some nice gnome illithids who had really cool laser pistols.
Yep.
And that was a lot of fun.
Okay, so let's talk about Galarian. This is Pathfinder's setting. Guns, I can't say they're rampant. They are an uncommon item, so they are somewhat difficult to find unless you are a gunslinger. They have a good canonical in-world explanation for why firearms developed. There's a small region of the world between two very powerful, magically inclined nations that hate each other. They had like a massively long war, and the kind of no man's land in between them is absolutely a mess because of it. It's called the Mana Wastes. And in the Mana Wastes, magic doesn't work right. There's pockets where it just doesn't function at all, and there are other pockets where it functions, but it's very, very unpredictable and dangerous to use. So they needed a way to defend themselves living in this habitat. So they developed guns in the appropriately named Dawn Gun Hold.
Solid name.
Yeah.
Very
so
solid.
yeah, Alkenstar, the Outlaws of Alkenstar, Adventure Path, Dawn Gun Hold. Yeah, if you want guns, grab Guns and Gears. There are so many. There's so many guns.
I ordered Guns and Gears as part of a Humble Bundle, like I did the physical, and I was hoping it was going to be here for tonight, and it is not here yet. But I will own it very soon, and I'm actually really stoked for this.
Yeah.
I want to stop and make an observation, and let's see if it actually holds up. This completely jives with the explanation that you gave for why there are no guns, in the sense that in all these places where magic was available to folks, they continued to use magic. They didn't invest in inventing anything else to protect themselves.
Yeah.
No gunpowder. In this one space where there wasn't magic to protect them, that they couldn't develop those powers because it literally doesn't work right in this space, they did develop gunpowder and therefore guns.
Kind of reminds me of in Final Fantasy XIV, there's an entire nation of people who can't control magic. They fundamentally are just unable to use magic at all. So they invented sufficiently magitech technology is what they have, using, applied phlebotinum. So that is a cool way to, if you want guns and you don't want it to be like super prevalent, just having a culture that historically was unable to wield magic and so had to rely on practical technology.
That raises an interesting question. How widespread do we think guns should be in our settings?
I think it depends again on the setting, like we talked about. Like if it's a closely guarded secret, like in Faerun, then it's not going to be wildly accessible. Obviously, if you have like a xenophobic like nation that wants to hold on to that secret because it's the one advantage they have over their neighbors who can actually wield magic, that also makes sense as to why guns would be less common. Maybe you just want them to be as ubiquitous as a wand, which the appeal there is that, again, like we said before, easily accessible to the common man, doesn't require years of training to master. It's pretty easy to just pull a trigger rather than try to conjure up a cloud kill. It really just depends on your setting.
I'm going to ask you a question. I'm tempted to say if I'm going to have guns, I more or less want them to be common. And here's my explanation for why. But maybe you would tell me, don't worry about this. I never make my rangers count their arrows. I just assume you're going to get into town. You're going to make sure that you have enough of them. If you try to pull some like wackadoo idea of like, I'm going to pin 100 arrows and like, no, you don't have that many. We both know that. But outside of something crazy like that, I'm just going to allow it. If we say that firearms are rare, then it becomes, well, how is this person manufacturing gunpowder, or where are they finding it? How are they building like wad? How are they building the actual munitions? Because none of these things are going to be super available. You're not going to find like ball bearings that fit exactly the barrel of whatever gun you happen to be using. I would rather, if we're going to go down this path, have some suspension of disbelief, just be like, you have a method of getting them. And the easiest thing in my mind is to say they're common. Would you worry about that? Or would you be like, they can be uncommon? Maybe you're the only character who's ever going to have them, but somehow you just get them.
Well, I think there's ways to do it where it's uncommon. Some examples are like in Critical Role, one of the players wanted to play a gunslinger, but Matt didn't really have a place for guns in his setting. So basically that person is inventing guns for the setting. And that's like future campaigns that they did. Guns were more ubiquitous because he invented them. He invented them because a demon gave him a dream on how to make it. Gunpowder is still like common and used for other things, but it's considered like not really useful for a lot of things. He's the only one who's able to use gunpowder to make guns. So there are ways that you can, like, he's the only one who's kind of made this connection. There's ways that you can sort of hand wave it. I mean, this conversation is really a conversation that you only really need to have when a player is interested in playing a character who uses a gun. Another example was in my game that I am a player in. One of the backup characters for my witch that I've mentioned a few times is I wanted to play a gunslinger. The rationalization that my DM came up with was guns used to exist in the past super advanced technological era that had an apocalypse and is now no longer there. And I'm rediscovering them because I was possessed by a spirit of that old empire. So there's ways that you can make it work.
I follow that. I guess if you're using like bullets to ammunition, so like gunpowder encased in something, just the manufacturing of that, like an artificer is the kind of thing where I can imagine I understand within the character how you would build this. I would have a harder time giving a gun to my bard or my swashbuckler without just explicitly saying like, oh, just you get them. But I hear the point you're making. And I think if everybody's willing to kind of suspend disbelief and go along with it, we can make that work and it's going to be fun. Nobody's going to have a bad time over it.
Yeah.
So let's talk some mechanics, all of, 40 minutes into the episode.
Whoops.
Okay.
I think maybe I got a little bit carried away with my rants.
Oh, we had fun. We got to look at Forgotten Realms and make jokes. Okay, so 5th edition Firearms, they're in there. They're in those rules. They're in them. Grab your Dungeon Master's Guide because that's where they are.
Not in the index, mind you.
Yeah. We also have grenades and grenade launchers, which is hilarious.
Yeah. So Chapter 9, the Dungeon Master's Workshop, includes rules for firearms, including Renaissance era firearms. So that's your musket, your black powder pistol, modern firearms, your automatic pistol, your revolver, hunting rifle, etc. And then futuristic weapons where there's like an antimatter rifle and a laser pistol.
I really want an antimatter rifle because that looks dope.
Yeah.
68 necrotic damage. Yes, please.
Yeah. it's a 2-shot disintegrator gun. It's cool.
It's fantastic.
Yeah. So those are put in there for if you want to run essentially games in other time periods. Like if you want to run a modern D&D game for some reason, it's like, sure, everyone's going to be using revolvers. If you want to run a science fantasy game, you could use those weapons, but just the math on those weapons, because the damage is so much higher, it's going to fundamentally alter all of the tactics. Like a modern revolver does it either 2d6 or 2d8. I'm forgetting. 2d8, right? Why would you use a greatsword when you could just buy a revolver? Like
the answer is that you wouldn't, because who uses a greatsword in a modern campaign anyway?
Exactly.
But yeah, I mean, the thing is, if you're going to do like a modern, and this is a discussion for another episode, I think it would behoove us to do an entire episode on using D&D or Pathfinder to do a modern type game. But the thing that you have to realize when you're doing that is fights are going to end quicker. It's just kind of how it's going to go. But if you're okay with that, that's fine.
Yeah, I think that really hits it. So for our typical game, though, like you're playing in a fantasy setting, medieval adjacent, so you're going to be using those Renaissance weapons. If you as a player want access to these, and if your DM is comfortable with them in your game, probably the most common way you're going to get it is either you're going to play an artificer or you're going to take the gunner feat. Now, despite being martial weapons, if I remember correctly, like all those firearms are either simple or martial, whatever, you don't get access to them by default. You're not proficient with them by default, even if you're a fighter or something. If you take the gunner feat, or if you are an artificer, you are then proficient in firearms. Now, that doesn't necessarily make them exist in your setting, of course.
But if they were there, they will.
This also comes back to DM fiat. So, if you're a player who wants to play guns, I think most DMs would be willing to say that they are, like, if they're allowing guns in their campaign setting, I think they'll be fine with martial weapons being included with guns. Otherwise, I don't know why you're allowing guns in your campaign in the first place. That's unless you're really trying to, mess around with your player and make it communicate to them that it's extremely hard to do. You shouldn't require a feat for them to use a thing. Just if you're that uncomfortable with it, just don't allow them to do it.
So I think one of the big problems is Randall called this out earlier, but one of you called it out earlier. The weapon damage on firearms is better than anything you're going to get from other weapons. So like a pistol does a D10, a musket does a D12, like a longbow is a D8. So you're upgrading those damage dice quite a bit for a comparable weapon. So just being able to say like, okay, all ranged characters get firearms and are suddenly way more effective than melee characters because the math is so much more in their favor. Like
That's
giving
fair.
that, giving that to them for free presents some.
I guess
it presents balance.
I guess I didn't really think of that because in games where I've had guns, it's usually only been one player that's been interested in it, and even though guns are more mathy. Like more, they're stronger. Not everybody's you guys. Not everybody's trying to optimize their character. Some people just don't want to use guns, even if it's suboptimal. That's just my experience, but that's a fair point. That's a valid point.
I'll also say though, mechanically, the ammunition is fairly expensive.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So-
and also guns have, Quasit made a good point. Guns have a shorter range than a longbow does.
That is true.
But I don't know if that's like going to be super mechanically impactful. Like if everybody's more or less in melee range anyway, like a range of 30 feet is still enough for this pistol to make you have a sad time.
Plus, you're going to throw sharpshooter on there, and then it's like, oh yeah, long range, not a problem.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But paying 3 gold for 10 bullets, imagine burning 2 gold per fight.
Yeah. Boy, look, if you can afford the 500 gold pieces for a musket, I don't think the 3 gold is going to kill you.
No, I'm going to kill someone and steal the musket. The problem is reloading it later.
Fair.
Yeah. Must get me this gun.
So one interesting thing, I only remember this being said once, but apparently the Renaissance firearms are going to be in the 2024 player's hand. I don't know if that's actually true. I remember it being said, but lots of things are said. I think it was Crawford, not sure. But yeah, I'm curious to see how that's going to change the game going forward. Will they just be martial weapons? Is every archer going to upgrade to a musket at level 5? Like, who knows?
Are we going to get better bows?
Maybe. Very quick mention, early in 5e's lifetime, early in Critical Role being a really popular thing, Matt Mercer published a gunslinger subclass for the fighter. It's on DM's Guild. It's fine. It's not amazing. Like, people really like it because it's Matt Mercer and because it's guns and all that.
It's kind of boring, if I'm going to be completely honest. Sorry, Matt.
Yeah. He was attempting to very quickly adapt the PF1 gunslinger mechanics to 5e, specifically for the guy that was invented. Percy, thank you. I've watched the animated version of the show, and that's as much as I've gotten. Yeah, so he was trying to adapt it so that all of the characters could transition when they went from Pathfinder to D&D, specifically so they could start streaming Critical Role. So yeah, it's there. We'll have an affiliate link in the show notes. It's fine. We also have an optimization handbook for it on the site.
Also, a little disclaimer for people who have watched Critical Role and want to do a Percy-like character. Matt has said, and it's pretty obvious, this is not the rules he uses for Percy. Percy is way more powerful than these rules show, because the stuff that Percy was out damaging some of the source, he was out damaging the sorcerer when the sorcerer was part of the group. So he was extremely powerful and broken. But but Matt scaled it back so that normal DMs won't get mad at their players for taking it. So if you're wondering why it doesn't feel as awesome as it did for Percy, that's why.
That makes sense. So I want to hit Kobold Press's Tome of Heroes real quick. Randall reminded me of this while we were planning the episode. Tome of Heroes introduces a system for firearms. It's very similar to the official one for 5e, but all of the damage dice are stepped down in exchange to make firearms actually interesting beyond just like, oh great, it's a fancy crossbow. The damage dice on all of the weapons explode. So if you roll the highest number on the die, you get to roll the die again and add it. Which, it doesn't happen a lot, but it feels real cool.
It feels kind of like the fatal property in Pathfinder that guns have.
Yeah, pretty much. It's real cool if you go in as an assassin rogue with a pistol and like you get your crit, you get a big pile of D6s, you roll them, it's like, how many of these explode? It feels real good. They also have optional misfire rules similar to Pathfinder. So like you roll a 1, the gun is unusable. You can try to fix it. If you mess up, it's even more unusable, and then you need to spend 10 minutes trying to fix it. That's an optional rule that can make guns feel a little more risky. honestly, they're not so much better than bows and crossbows that I think you really need that. But, discuss it with your party if you're going to play.
Trading that extra damage for occasionally something go wrong at least feels like it might mechanically even out, right? You'd have to do the math to know, but at least you're taking risk. And I recognize that is alluring. That could be fun for some players to be steering a character where any moment in the middle of battle, it's like, my main way that I deal damage is broken.
Well, that's bring a backup weapon, I guess. So let's talk about PF2, where breaking your gun is a very real possibility. So I mentioned this earlier, guns and gears, that's where all the guns are. There's a ton of them. There's literally a 2-page spreadsheet, essentially, just guns. So many. And then there's a separate spreadsheet, which is a full page of the combination guns. So that's your axe musket and your mace pistol.
And then there's also several archetypes, one of which is very cool, Beast Gunner. They have these legendary beast guns that are stupid broken, but very fun. Very fun.
Do you mean a table?
Table spreadsheet? Sure. Yeah.
Okay. Good.
Okay.
At what point does a table become a spreadsheet?
I don't want to talk about this. Can we move on?
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Look, you look at it on the page, you're like, oh no, counting.
I said I don't want to talk about it, Tyler. Move on.
All right. Okay. So firearms in Pathfinder, very cool. Beyond what you'll get with crossbows, firearms have a ton of different weapon properties. So crossbows, it's here's the slightly larger crossbow. Here's the much larger crossbow. And really the difference is the really big one takes longer to reload. The really small one can be fired with one hand. And that's kind of it. Firearms have every weapon property under the sun. And then a bunch of new ones that they added specifically just to support firearms. They're very diverse. They're very interesting. You can change a lot about how your character functions just by changing guns. A lot of people are going to default to musket and dueling pistol because those are your vanilla and vanilla bean of firearms, but there's so much more there.
Or pepperbox. Pepperbox is another common one.
Yeah, spoon gun.
Yeah, but if you outside of the gunslinger adventure, you're probably not going to get a ton out of going guns as opposed to just going a crossbow. Because they do have a lot of drawbacks to them that gunslingers specifically mitigate. And, gunslingers also have a subclass that is focused on just crossbows. So people have asked, why not just use crossbows? Because of all the cool features that guns have. Fatal is just really good. Fatal can put out some insane numbers. Yep. And some guns, Closets point out fatal aim and concussive, all of that stuff. Jezzails, yes. Embrace your inner rat from Warhammer, the Skaven Jezzails. I love Jezzails.
Ash, you called this out. Gunslingers and inventors can bypass some of the problems with guns. The thing that slows guns down that makes them harder to use than a bow is they take more time to reload. It's typically one action to reload. And in a turn where you get 3 actions, it's probably going to be move, reload, shoot. That's going to be a lot of your turns. Gunslingers get some special option from their subclass that lets you reload and take another action at the same time. So the sniper archetype can either hide or take cover and also reload as a single action. You get that nice action compression. It makes the reload less painful. And then you still get to use a really cool gun with all its fun traits. And then you've got pepper boxes and weapons that have a magazine, essentially. There's the Orc Bunker Buster, which is literally, it's a minigun. It is literally a mini.
I love it. It's great.
Yeah.
The other thing that I would suggest, I know we're still talking about Pathfinder 2, but if you're looking for a fantasy game that marries guns and gunpowder pretty elegantly, aside from Pathfinder 2, Warhammer is the other one that I would recommend. That's classically where guns and especially unreliable technology exist. And if you want to blow yourself up as much as the enemy, play a Skaven in Warhammer.
Yeah, Warhammer fantasy roleplay, people seem to like it a whole lot.
It is fun. Just don't go into it with your character creation thinking that you're going to have exactly the character that you want, because you could end up having a horrible life that you roll for. Warhammer. Woo!
Yeah. You were describing a moment ago, the different reload and do a thing. So we played a one shot this past weekend, and a couple examples of that were interesting. So one was a tactical reload where you could shove a character, and then along with shoving the character, you had the option of then following that character or staying where you're at and just blasting them, right?
Mhm.
But the perk being whether or not the shove failed or succeeded, you got to reload the weapon no matter what. At one point, famously, at least we laughed a lot, Tyler attempted to shove, critically failed, and actually fell prone himself. But his gun was reloaded, so everything was fine.
Yes.
The other fun one that came up, which then led us scrambling, like looking for rules, like, okay, what exactly is supposed to happen here? My son was doing the risky reload and failed, missed the next attack. So what is this? You actually get to attack. You reload and attack all for one action. But if you miss, it's a misfire.
Yeah.
So let's talk about misfires in PF2.
Yeah. So misfires were a bigger issue in PF1. You could misfire on like a 1 or a 2, and there were things you could do to reduce that number. In PF2, you only misfire on a 1, and only if you haven't cleaned your gun that day, essentially. Or if you use some action that introduces a misfire chance, like risky reload. So misfire is still there, but it's really only a problem if you're like, I found this gun in the dirt, I'm going to use it. Or if you're specifically using those actions that use misfire as a balancing mechanism.
In Pathfinder 1, it was a huge problem. Sometimes if you were just really unlucky, like you would feel like you were spending most of your time repairing your gun rather than actually doing anything. But it did kind of balance out because gunslingers in Pathfinder 1 were broken. They were busted. They could put out some of the highest damage numbers outside of a caster. It was insane.
And so it's reasonable to say, like, most classes have daily preparation. Part of your daily preparation as a gunslinger, or generally as someone who uses guns, you're going to spend 10 minutes cleaning your gun every day.
Yes.
If your GM is arguing that it's like, well, no, you need to explicitly tell me that, or where are you getting the resources to do this, or anything like this, I feel like that's sit down, have that conversation, be like, we're politely but firmly, no.
Yeah, I mean, the other time that I could see it coming up is like if you're forced to trudge through a swamp or something and you fall in, your DM might have you say, okay, you're going to have to set aside some time to clean your gun if we're going to keep going. So that's the other time that I could see it happening.
I like that, but we would agree, like, you don't pop that on them when combat opens, like a crocodile comes out of the water.
No. You definitely telegraph that before time, but before combat starts. It's like, hey, just so you know, you fell into the swamp and now your gun is dirty. You might want to deal with that before you keep moving.
Or the other thing that I can imagine doing is saying something like, hey, you are concerned that your gun is going to get fouled if you walk into the swamp. So maybe you need to take some preparations, or maybe if combat breaks out, you need to spend an action or two getting your gun out. Like that could be a way that preemptively, like, are you going to take the risk and carry it, or are you potentially going to foul it?
Yeah.
Tome of Heroes actually has a little sidebar that says, yes, Tome of Heroes, not Guns and Gears. Tome of Heroes has a little sidebar that says, hey, we realize that in the real world, getting gunpowder wet ruins it for, firearm purposes. But in a game where you can go swimming with a scroll and it's not a problem, just let players get away with it.
That's fair.
The way that they did it in Critical Role was kind of brilliant. When Percy had to go to the plane of water in order to make it work, the druids that sent them there casted an air bubble around his gun so that he could still fire it in the water.
Nice.
Perfect.
Okay. All right. So I want to talk about one thing in PF2 guns that I really hate, the scatter property.
Oh boy. Rant time from Tyler.
So when you're using a blunderbuss, a shotgun, you're going to think, okay, it's either going to spoon gun. You think either it's going to fire like a solid slug and it's going to hit one thing, or it's going to fire like pellets or something and it's going to have a small scatter. That's not the way scatter weapons work. In PF2, the way scatter weapons work is it's essentially a grenade launcher. You shoot your target and then deal splash damage everywhere around, which, fine, whatever. The issue I have is scatter weapons place a permanent tax on your party's front line. Like if you have a fighter who's up in melee, keeping all of the monsters away from you, if you're using a scatter gun, every single one of your attacks damages that fighter, and they are paying a tax for your poor choice of weapon.
But you could say the same thing about alchemists and their bombs. Alchemists and bombs do the same thing.
Alchemists have a feat that lets you specifically exclude other creatures from the splash damage. Gunslingers don't get that.
Okay.
On the flip side, though, it's usually 1 damage.
It's 1 damage per attack. So like 1 or 2 every turn. It adds up pretty quickly. I dealt more damage in that one shot. I dealt more damage to our party than most of the monsters until the last fight, and then we all died.
Yeah, eventually you TPK'd, so that's not exactly, yeah.
Why is it that all of your stories where you're the DM, Randall, and then you TPK'd?
I've only TPK'd him once.
Oh, okay.
It was the other guy.
I'm thinking Icewind Dale. Yeah, where you were player.
I was in the party.
Mm-hmm.
I'm actually taking this a different direction, Tyler. I feel like this scatter's irrelevant.
Mm-hmm.
The 1 damage towards the enemies or the 1 damage towards the party repeatedly, it did add up. I don't think it was particularly impactful. You know, we had that speculation. I feel like we had a little bit of fun talking through it. Like, maybe I can imagine if the type of damage that you're dealing with that scatter is a weakness, then that could be interesting because now all of a sudden I'm getting to deal a lot of bonus damage. But I feel like that's so circumstantial and potentially so rare, it doesn't justify it. I almost... Yeah. I don't hate it. I just look at it and it's like, okay, fine. We're doing this now.
Yeah, that's exactly my thinking. If you want to use a really big gun, just get a Harmona gun and call it a day.
Yeah, Closet is asking, like, would scatter interact with elemental ammo? That's the other thing we're talking about is, like, if I could figure out a way, like, give me a feat where I can somehow just, like, I know you can buy ammo and have elemental ammo. Give me a feat where I can somehow, for some tax, change what type of damage I'm dealing for a period of time.
That would be cool.
You know, some magic infusion or something like that. Then I could assess as like, okay, I think this thing is weak by fire and I have some logical reason. Or I could use the built-in mechanics. PF2 actually has good built-in mechanics for figuring this sort of thing out. And then I'll burn an action or I'll burn 2 actions to change my munitions for 10 minutes or something.
That would be nice. I don't know if it's an option. If it was going to exist in PF2, I'm pretty sure we already have it. I just don't know about it.
No, that's fair. This week, we have a question of the week. This week's question of the week comes to us from @Theater. Wow.
Right.
Is that a weird way to say
that's one of my that's actually one of my players. Theater.
He's in the Patreon Discord now.
Exactly. He's in Discord too. I'm assuming this question came from Discord, not from okay.
I think he did actually ask it on Twitter.
Okay, that's fair. I'm now wondering though, is this like a funny way of pronouncing theater? Like, theater, right? But it's probably not. It's probably something else. The question.
Yeah.
Everyone has one. What is your favorite memory for a D&D or Pathfinder game?
That's so hard to choose. Do you guys have anything?
I do. I had to think about this one because, so many. Randall, I don't think I've told you this story, so this is going to be a fresh one for you. I want to tell the story of the worst game that I ever DM.
Of course, that would be your favorite memory.
I learned a lot from it. Okay, so I'm in high school. I'm playing with Random and our high school friends, and we were trying to start up a game that we play like short chunks at lunch at school because like that's when we were all consistently together. I wanted to DM, like, I just wanted to do a dungeon crawl, like fight monsters, get loot. Like, I didn't have big plans for a story. That was it. Like, I gave everyone basic parameters for characters. And they all come back with the weirdest bunch of oddballs you've ever seen. Like, we had a cat person. We had a half troll. Like, we probably had a warforged. I don't remember. But I put everyone in a room and I did the classic, like, oh yeah, you start in a bar. And immediately, like first minute of the game, the players all decide we're in a bar. We're going to have a bar fight. Start a bar fight. I, an idiot, 16 or something at the time, just leaned into it like, okay, fine, bar fight. Bar fight happens. It goes immediately off the rails. And I decided, okay, I've grown tired of this. I want you to be in the dungeon now, please. Teleport the entire party to the dungeon. Say like, everyone wakes up in this dungeon with these like nice walled canyon that you can't get out of. And they all look at each other and realize none of their characters can distinguish each other from monsters. So they did the very, very logical, sensible thing. And they all killed each other.
Love that. Yeah, that's your favorite memory?
I learned so much from that, and it's so stupid and funny.
Fair enough.
Like, looking back on...
That's what my character would do.
Yeah, like, I made all of the most obvious DM mistakes you could think of in the span of, like, 20 minutes. I occasionally think, like, I've made this mistake before, then, and don't...
Well, I mean... At least you learned from it, I guess.
Exactly.
So, yeah, cool.
How about you guys? Coming up with anything?
I ran a couple one-shots for Tyler and Random where I wrote the story, I put together the character, I built the puzzles, I designed the combat, made sure like everything was leveled. I had DM'd Homebrew for Tyler before, but it was very off the rails. It was mainly to do visual gags in Roll20, if we're being honest with one another. And like there was a story there. It was fine. I feel like we got somewhere. People had fun. I'm not, but the one shots that I was running, there was an arc there and there was a story. And I think getting deeper and deeper into it, there was kind of the moment of like realizing that a particular character was the same character that we were talking about, and everybody got very excited. And that was really cool. And then there was some timey-wimey stuff where like they realized, okay, well, we're here. And so something that like Random's character really always appreciated about a particular place, actually, as I want to say he was a cleric, but regardless, I'm pretty sure he was a cleric. So I think what he did was bless the place to make it the way that it was, so that when he was growing up as a child, it always felt like a safe place to be. And so that was a lot of fun for me. It was really rewarding. And I felt like, it's like, I'm getting it. I'm doing a good job. I feel like since then, if I'm running anything long form, it's not something that I'm writing. I've been running like Dragonlance for about a year now, which is fun. Don't get me wrong, but it isn't nearly as satisfying and it doesn't feel nearly as rewarding as writing good, serious homebrew.
Yeah.
It's
on the spot.
It's so hard for me to choose because
Dan, cue the music.
All right. I'll give you guys one of them just because it was a really powerful moment, an emotional moment for all of us. It's a bit complicated of a story that I have to tell. So one of my players was playing a character. He was playing, I've mentioned B's custom class, the Fool.
Yes.
Which uses fate points, and this character was great. This player was really good at making really good story moments with the fate points. But basically, one of the fate points that they used allowed them to follow their personal antagonist named Wit to the ethereal realm, where I basically was like, okay, I didn't know what this character's deal was. He was kind of an agent of chaos, and he had no memories, and he had an intelligence score of 6. So basically, I went through this whole story writing process where I figured out exactly what his deal was that he was a child of fate that the gods cared about. Well, that he was like a pawn in many ways. One of the gods that he thought was his enemies was actually really cared about him and raised him, and tried to fool him into thinking that she hated him because she was trying to protect him from this other god who really wanted to kill him. And because he went back in time to try to prevent one of his friends' deaths, his personality got split into the witty, conniving part of his personality, which was his personal antagonist named Wit, and his main character, the more id-like, instinct, warm, nice person with all the morals. But there was one thing that I still hadn't figured out. Like I was showing him his backstory, like he was having these visions of his past, of himself as a child growing up in the realm of the gods, which was the Feywild. But the one thing that I hadn't ever really figured out, and I just didn't really think about, was he had part of the Fool classes. You get a familiar. You get a specific familiar tied to the subclass, and his was named Ribbit. It was a, I forget what the name of it is. It's a rabbit with a horn on its head. Almirage, I think it is.
Yeah, Almirage.
Yeah.
Jackalope.
So I didn't know how that factored into the story, but the way that it sort of organically formed as to how he got it, because basically I was describing his character realizing he was watching himself as like a 10-year-old kid trying to escape the Feywild, and he was at the gate, and then I just on a whim said, the vision of yourself sees you and talks to you and says, oh, hey, what are you doing here? And my player did a very beautiful thing. He said, are you trying to leave? And the kid said, yeah, I don't think this is the right place for me anymore, but I'm scared to go through the portal. And he said, it's okay. I have something for you that will help you and protect you and always be a good friend to you. And he gifted him his Almirage. And so he closed the loop. He was the person that gave himself the familiar. And it was really emotional for all of us when we realized the implications of it. My player even got a little teary-eyed, and it was a beautiful scene, and it made me love D&D. So
that's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
I like that.
Yeah.
Oh, hail the Leisure Illuminati. I'm Reynold James. You'll find me on amateurjack.com and on Twitter and Instagram at JackAmateur.
I'm Tyler Campstra. You'll find me on RPGBOT.net, Facebook, Twitter, RPGBOT.Dot, NET, and most other socials as RPGBot.
I'm Ash Eli. You can follow me on Twitter, shooting the stuff at Graven Ashes, or on YouTube at AshRaven Media. If you want me to run a game for you, find me on startplaying.games, link in the description.
If you have enjoyed the show, please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts and rate us on Spotify or your favorite podcast app. It's a quick, free way to support the podcast and helps us to reach new listeners. You'll find links in the show notes. You'll find affiliate links or source books and other materials linked in the show notes, as well as on RPGBOT.net. Following these links helps us to make this show happen every week. If your question should be the question of the week next week, please email podcast@RPGBOT.net or message us on Twitter at RPGBOT.Net. Please also consider supporting us on Patreon, where you can find all kinds of great rewards. At any tier, you'll get early access to RPGBOT content and polls for future content. At our $3 tiers, you'll enjoy your choice of ad-free access to RPGBOT.net, or ad-free podcast episodes and access to live-stream podcast recordings. At our $5 tiers and above, you'll get all of that, plus access to the RPGBOT.Discord. You'll find us at patreon.com/RPGBOT.
Well done. No, you're muted. You're muted.
I said I'm all out of gun puns. What do I do?
A better day has never come. I'm so happy. I'm so happy right now.
Well, at least you know. Wait, how does that work? No, it doesn't work there. Would you say you shoot your shot?
Thank you so much.
Look, I normally come out of these loaded and ready to go.
No!
Yeah.
I thought you said you were out.
I was. I reloaded.
Yeah, came into this thing all half cocked.
No, chat. No, chat. Don't you guys get in on this. Don't encourage them.
All right. Good job, everybody. That was fun.
Yeah, that was fun.